The clock struck midnight, but sleep was a stranger in my small kitchen. Spread across the table were Lucas's notebook, a half-packed lunchbox, and the remnants of my own supper, a cold cup of coffee, and a granola bar untouched. My hands shook slightly as I flipped through his history notes one more time, memorizing dates and facts Lucas was struggling to grasp. "You've got this," I whispered, brushing a stray strand of hair from his forehead. His eyes, heavy with exhaustion but shining with determination, met mine. We were both running on empty, but failure wasn't an option. Nights like this had become the norm since Patrick left. 6 years of me pulling double shifts at the hospital, then coming home to help with schoolwork, homework, and sometimes just to listen when the weight of it all threatened to break my boy. Alone, invisible, yet fiercely protective. The apartment around us was quiet, too quiet, save for the distant hum of the city outside. No one knocked on our door with offers of help. No one checked in to see if I had eaten or slept. Patrick's absence stretched like a shadow over everything. An absence marked not only by his physical disappearance, but by the silence he left behind. No calls, no support, no explanations. Just the sudden void when he packed his bags and vanished. I held on to a secret power, though. A stack of meticulous records documenting every missed payment, every broken promise, every call I made to legal aid. It was my armor, my quiet rebellion against a man who thought he could rewrite history on his own terms. Lucas stirred beside me, and I kissed his forehead again. For him, I had to be strong, even if that strength felt like it was cracking beneath the surface. The night Patrick walked out is etched in my mind like a scar. The house was cold, the air thick with anger and desperation. I had just lost my job temporarily, the bills piling up, and I needed him to stand beside me, not disappear. Instead, he stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, eyes blazing with blame. "You're ruining everything," he spat before closing the door behind him. That moment was the start of a pattern I came to know all too well. Promises made and broken, excuses thin as paper, and a man who claimed poverty while living a life I could only glimpse through the filtered lens of his social media. Weekend yacht trips, dinners at upscale restaurants, images that made my stomach twist with rage and disbelief. I told myself, maybe he's struggling too, a fragile hope that couldn't survive the truth. I was alone, carrying the full weight of parenting, the judgment of my own family pressing down hard. Grace, my sister, with her cold words and pointed questions, only added to the loneliness. They saw a failed marriage, a mother who let it fall apart. But I knew the truth. I was fighting for our survival, with no one beside me. Every sacrifice I made was a silent testament to my love for Lucas. I tracked every dollar like it was a lifeline. $500 a month for daycare and school activities, $1,200 for healthcare, hours taken off work for parent-teacher conferences, even nights spent pacing the floor when Lucas was sick because I couldn't afford a sitter. Patrick's contributions were sporadic at best. $300 one month, silence the next. And yet, Grace's voice echoed in my mind, accusing, judgmental. "You let him off the hook too easily." The weight of her blame stung. But Derek Hall, my co-worker and closest friend, was a steady anchor. He listened without judgment, reminding me I wasn't invisible or worthless. Together, we started organizing the mountain of documents I'd accumulated. Bank statements, text messages, legal letters, my secret weapon in a battle I hadn't fully committed to yet. Derek's steady presence gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, survival could lead to something more, a reclamation of dignity and control. The school fundraiser should have been a simple meeting, a chance to discuss upcoming expenses and coordinate. Instead, it became a stage for humiliation. Patrick showed up, not alone, but with Elise, his new wife, striding confidently through the room wearing a t-shirt that read, "Proud Mom." The silence was suffocating as she introduced herself to the gathered parents and teachers as Lucas's second mom. I felt every eye on me, the sting of betrayal sharper than any slap. Patrick's smirk was a punch to the gut, his disdain clear as he barely acknowledged my presence. Lucas stood beside me, confusion flickering across his face, but he said nothing. My throat tightened. pain bubbling just beneath my forced smile. Later, when I confided in Derek, I tried to downplay it. Maybe I'm overreacting, I told him, trying to convince myself. They're just trying to be involved. But the seed of doubt had been planted deep inside me. This wasn't just a harmless gesture. It was the beginning of a battle I hadn't even realized had already started. And I wasn't going to back down. The whispers started before I even noticed. At the hospital, a nurse I barely knew sidled up, her voice low and dripping with concern. I heard from the PTA that you're struggling to keep it together with your family. Must be hard, juggling everything alone. I forced a tight smile, heart thudding, not from kindness, but from the sting of being exposed. Patrick's subtle war had begun. At school, parents I once nodded to politely now avoided my gaze or offered hollow condolences. Grace didn't hold back. Her words cut sharper than any blade. You always were fragile, Maeve. Maybe if you'd been stronger, Patrick wouldn't have had to leave. The accusation echoed through my mind, making me question every sleepless night and every sacrifice. Elise, that cold shadow standing beside Patrick, was working her own angles, recruiting allies, painting me as the unstable mother who controlled Lucas too tightly, who was unreliable, maybe even a little unhinged. One afternoon, I overheard hushed conversations in the hospital break room. "Did you hear about Maeve's family drama? It's affecting her work," someone said. Another voice chimed in. "You can't be a good nurse if you're so distracted all the time." I clenched my fists, fighting tears and fury. Patrick's texts arrived like poison arrows. "You're alienating Lucas. Stop this before I go to court." He threatened legal action if I didn't cooperate, wielding the law like a weapon to intimidate rather than seek justice. The walls around me seemed to close tighter, the isolation suffocating. I was exhausted, yet beneath the weight of judgment and manipulation, something fierce stirred. I might be alone in this fight, but I refused to let Patrick rewrite my story or tarnish the truth of how fiercely I loved and protected my son. When the mediation appointment came, I felt the fragile hope of peace flicker inside me. Walking into the sterile room, papers in hand, I laid out the truth. Unpaid child support totaling nearly $15,000, countless missed pickups, and the glaring contradictions in Patrick's social media, boasting lavish vacations while claiming poverty. I spoke calmly, my voice steady despite the knot twisting in my stomach. Patrick's response was a practiced performance. Smiles that didn't reach his eyes, accusations that I was blocking him, undermining the relationship with our children. The mediator seemed uninterested, dismissing my detailed evidence as just another he said, she said scenario. The agreement was vague. Patrick would try to increase visits, but the victory I craved slipped through my fingers like smoke. Walking out, I felt the bitter taste of defeat settle deep. The truth didn't matter here. Charm and money wielded more power than honesty or hard work. I gritted my teeth, knowing the fight was far from over. But this system wasn't built to protect women like me. Lucas's 16th birthday should have been a celebration, a rare bright spot in the relentless storm. But Patrick's uninvited arrival turned it into a public spectacle of humiliation. Elise, with her false warmth and smug smile, took center stage, telling the guests, "We're the family Lucas deserves." Their words were knives, twisting in my heart. Guests shifted uncomfortably, the atmosphere thick with tension. Patrick handed Lucas a phone, loaded with a $50 gift card, a hollow gesture that barely hid the truth he refused to face. Years of neglect and unpaid support. Lucas forced a smile. But later, in the quiet of our living room, he confided in me, voice low and raw with hurt. I felt invisible, Mom, like they were showing off how great they are and I was just there. My heart shattered, not for myself, but for the boy who deserved so much more. That night, I realized Patrick wasn't just an absent father. He was a man who wielded shame as a weapon, publicly undermining my role as Lucas's mother and breaking the fragile trust we'd built. Desperation clawed at me, but I clung to hope as I arranged a private meeting with Patrick. I laid my cards on the table, pleading for consistency, for respect, for child support, for the simple dignity of co-parenting with honesty. I offered flexibility, willing to bend schedules to ease tension, to make things easier for Lucas. Patrick listened, expression unreadable, before delivering the coldest blow. "I'm doing what I want, Maeve," he said, eyes hard. "Either accept it, or I'll take it to court and prove you're the problem." The words cut deeper than any fight. This wasn't about Lucas. This wasn't about family. It was control, pure and simple. The last thread of hope snapped in that moment, leaving me with a heavy silence that filled the room. I left the meeting feeling hollow, the weight of his rejection settling like stone in my chest. But beneath that weight, a fierce flame ignited. I wasn't broken. I was a mother fighting for her children, and I would not back down. The walls around me felt like they were closing in tighter than ever, suffocating in their silence. Patrick's latest move was devastating. He'd taken my heartfelt plea and twisted it, spinning a narrative that painted me as the unreasonable one. Family gatherings became minefields. Grace's voice, cold and accusing, echoed in my mind. "You're playing the victim again, Maeve. It's pathetic." Her words stung worse than any barbed glance or whispered gossip. Even Derek, my steadfast ally, began to waver as exhaustion coated every conversation. He urged me to rest, but there was no rest for me, not with Lucas's future on the line. Lucas, once lively and sharp, had retreated into himself. I caught him staring out the window for hours, eyes clouded with confusion and hurt. I tried talking, but his words were few, each one weighed down by the silent battle he fought in his heart. I felt the crushing weight of failure settle on my shoulders. Was I really failing him after all? The mounting bills stared back at me from the kitchen table, each envelope a reminder of the impossible juggling act I performed daily without a safety net. No one stepped in. No one noticed. The holiday season was just around the corner, and the empty chairs at our modest table were a painful reminder of broken promises and shattered dreams. At work, whispers followed me like shadows. Nurses I barely knew offered sympathetic yet pitying glances, their conversations halting when I entered the break room. The legal filings showed Patrick's manipulative hand, carefully crafted to depict me as unstable and obstructive. My own family, the people who should have held me up, instead chose to side with him, their judgment heavier than any court ruling. Nights, I lay awake, replaying every interaction, wondering where I'd lost control, why my protectiveness seemed to invite attack rather than support. I was alone in this fight, with only the hollow echo of my own doubts for company. Yet, amidst the isolation and the relentless tide of setbacks, I kept my gaze on Lucas. His quiet moments, when he allowed me close, when he trusted me with his fears, were my only balm. I knew the truth. I wasn't just battling Patrick or the court system. I was fighting for my son's innocence, his right to feel safe and loved. No matter how deep the shadows grew around me, that spark of purpose refused to die. But in the stillness of those crushing days, I felt the weight of total failure more keenly than ever. I was exhausted, invisible, and utterly alone. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed to mirror the chill settling in my chest. Lucas sat by the window, his hopeful gaze fixed on the empty street, waiting for Patrick's car to pull up. Hours passed in silence, the quiet punctuated only by the distant hum of holiday traffic and the occasional sigh from my son. But Patrick never came. Not that day. Not ever. Meanwhile, Elise's social media was ablaze with pictures of their perfect holiday, smiling faces, glittering lights, and captions dripping with false warmth. Her posts were a cruel slap in the face, a stark contrast to the hollow ache I felt watching Lucas's shoulders slump in disappointment. I wrapped him in a blanket, the worn fabric a small comfort against the cold emptiness. In the kitchen, I cooked his favorite breakfast, the smells filling our tiny apartment with something resembling normalcy. "You'll never be alone," I promised him, my voice soft but resolute. His eyes searched mine for truth, and I meant every word. But the damage was done, etched deep into the fragile trust between a boy and his absent father. The neighbors, peering through their curtains, saw the quiet despair in our home. Even family members passing by caught the flicker of pain that ignited something fierce inside me. That day, my sorrow erupted into a fiery resolve. Later, I met Derek in the dim light of our usual cafe, the words spilling out before I could stop them. No more excuses. No more waiting. The victim I'd been, the woman crushed beneath disappointment and betrayal, shattered like glass. In its place stood a mother who refused to be broken, who refused to let Patrick's cruelty define our story. That Christmas morning was more than just a missed visit. It was the moment I drew a line in the snow, cold and unyielding. From now on, I would fight not with tears, but with fire. The battle for my son's dignity and our future was just beginning, and this time, I would not back down. The silence of my apartment was almost deafening as I sat alone, sifting through years of evidence, bank statements, text messages, legal documents piled high like a fortress around me. Each paper told a story of sacrifices made and promises broken, a timeline of neglect and lies that Patrick had tried to erase. The anger simmered beneath the surface, a fierce undercurrent to the exhaustion that racked my body. I thought of Grace's harsh words, the system's indifference, and the endless court battles that seemed designed to drain my hope and my strength. But now, anger gave way to clarity. I was no longer just surviving. I was awakening. Every missed payment, every humiliating confrontation, every moment I had been painted as unstable or unfit fueled a growing fire inside me. I recalled the long nights pacing when Lucas was sick, the whispered judgments at work, the social media boasts that mocked my struggles. It wasn't just about money or custody. It was about reclaiming our truth. I stared at the stack of documents like a mother readying her arsenal. "I've been fighting alone," I whispered to the empty room. "And it's time to fight smart." The pain that once threatened to crush me now sharpened my vision. No longer would I let them erase me or my son's worth. The years of quiet endurance had forged something new, an unbreakable resolve born from heartbreak and betrayal. The seed of transformation took root in that small, cluttered apartment where loneliness had once reigned. I was no longer just a weary mother bearing the weight of the world. I was a strategist, a warrior preparing for battle. The past would not define me. The lies would not silence me. This was my moment to rise, not just for me, but for Lucas. With a steady breath, I promised myself, never again. I would channel every ounce of pain into a calculated fight for justice, for truth, for the future we deserved. The long road ahead suddenly seemed less daunting, illuminated by the fierce light of a mother's love, turned to purpose. When I finally shared my resolve with Derek, his eyes lit with a mix of relief and determination. "You have all the proof," he said firmly. "It's time to use it." Together we began to sketch out a plan, a blueprint for the fight ahead. It wasn't just about court hearings or legal filings anymore. It was about rebuilding my reputation, reclaiming control over the narrative Patrick had twisted. Derek suggested using my professional standing as a pediatric nurse, highlighting the strength and compassion I embodied every day. "Your story is powerful," he reminded me. "It's time the world saw it." We talked late into the night about documenting every interaction, every call, every message, a digital fortress to shield us from his manipulation. Derek's idea to boost my online presence struck a chord. Patrick's social media lies had shaped public opinion for too long. If I could show my strength, my success, my unwavering dedication to Lucas, we could counter his falsehoods with undeniable truth. It was a new kind of battle, fought not just in courtrooms, but in the hearts and minds of everyone watching. We agreed the first step would be organizing the mountain of financial and legal documents I'd gathered, a case so airtight it couldn't be ignored. In that moment, surrounded by papers and plans, I felt something rare: hope. The fight was far from over, but this time, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to win. I sat with Derek at the cluttered kitchen table, our faces lit only by the soft glow of my laptop screen. We were deep into an audit, piecing together the scattered fragments of Patrick's life that he desperately tried to hide. His social media was a tapestry of contradictions: photos of sleek luxury cars, weekends spent on yachts, Elise flaunting designer shopping sprees that screamed of excess. None of it matched his claims of poverty, the ones he used to dodge child support payments. Derek swiped through captions and tagged locations, each post a loud lie that chipped away at the story Patrick wanted everyone to believe. But it wasn't just the money that struck me. As we cross-referenced dates, I realized something far more insidious. Patrick had no steady job, no real income. His supposed work was sporadic, shallow gigs, or nothing at all. Every visit he made to the kids' school or our apartment, he leaned heavily on me. Childcare arrangements, rides, last-minute pickups. I was the invisible thread holding a family he claimed to support. It hit me like a punch in the gut. I'd been the backbone all along, the financial and emotional anchor, while he played the part of the distant parent. Derek pointed out the legal leverage we had. "You're sitting on a mountain of proof, Maeve. They don't see it yet, but this is your secret power." I nodded, the weight of years pressed down on my shoulders but a fierce clarity burning in my chest. I wasn't weak. I was the family's foundation, and now, that truth was undeniable. Back at the hospital, I kept the exhaustion carefully folded beneath a mask of calm competence. Nights were long, shifts relentless, but I moved through them with a quiet determination. At home, I created a digital fortress, a folder filled with every text, every bank statement, screenshots of Patrick's ostentatious social media posts, and witness statements from friends and neighbors who'd seen through his facade. I shared the folder with my lawyer, who assured me motions were already being drafted to enforce child support and tighten visitation terms. It was a slow burn, silent and invisible to Lucas, who deserved a mother who wasn't wrapped up in legal battles all day. So around him, I maintained the illusion of tired normalcy, home-cooked meals, homework help, and whispered reassurances that everything was fine. Behind closed doors, I was a warrior preparing for battle, but to the world, I was just a weary nurse and a tired mother. In the quiet moments before bed, Lucas's defenses began to crack. One night, his voice barely a whisper, he confessed the truth I'd feared but needed to hear. "Mom, I can't keep pretending anymore." His eyes were haunted as he spilled the cruelty he endured from Elise, locked out of rooms during visits, forced to do chores, and the venomous words about me being a nobody. He told me about Patrick's lies, the way he twisted our story to blame me for everything, painting Elise as the real mom who deserved his loyalty. My heart broke in pieces, but that heartbreak sharpened my resolve. Lucas's courage to speak out handed me the ultimate weapon, truth from the source no one could deny. The false image Patrick had built was crumbling, and now I held the blueprint to expose it. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about the voices of the children caught in the crossfire. Their pain was my call to arms, and I could no longer wait. The following morning, my lawyer sent Patrick formal notices demanding the overdue child support he'd evaded for 4 years, $14,400 plus interest, every penny documented and undeniable. At the same time, I blocked Elise on social media, cutting off the toxic stream of her manipulative posts. I contacted the school, raising concerns about Lucas's welfare and asking them to monitor Patrick's visits more closely. For a while, Patrick ignored the legal notices, dismissing them as harassment, as if his neglect could be shrugged off like an inconvenient chore. Elise's social media became erratic. Defensive posts, sporadic updates, a facade cracking under pressure. Small fissures appeared in their polished narrative, but Patrick remained blind to the full scale of my preparation. The first moves were subtle, but the game had begun. I could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment I stepped from the shadows, and though they didn't see it yet, the fight was already shifting in my favor. The gymnasium was packed, buzzing with the excited chatter of proud families and classmates. I sat stiffly in the front row, my heart pounding beneath the quiet restraint I wore like armor. Lucas's graduation was supposed to be a celebration, but beneath the polished speeches and applause, I felt the weight of years of absence, neglect, and silent endurance. Then, as Lucas's name was called, the room shifted. Elise appeared in the doorway, that damn proud mom shirt stretched tight over her smug smile. A ripple of murmurs spread. People who knew, or thought they knew, the story. I held my breath, clutching my hands in my lap, bracing for the quiet humiliation. Lucas walked steadily to the stage, but then something changed. Instead of just accepting his diploma, he reached for the microphone. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. His voice was calm but fierce. For 6 years, my mom, Maeve, has been the only one showing up. Every homework night, every practice, every sick day. My dad and his new wife have been absent. I want everyone to know the truth. The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Cameras flashed, capturing every second. I felt tears sting my eyes, but they were not tears of weakness. They were the release of a storm I'd weathered alone. Patrick's face went pale, his composure cracking like fragile glass. The power had shifted, and in that single moment, the years of silent suffering exploded into a public reckoning. The aftermath was immediate and electric. The video of Lucas's speech spread like wildfire, shared and reshared by people who saw the raw, unfiltered truth. Messages of support poured in from neighbors, co-workers, even strangers who admired the fierce love behind my fight. Patrick scrambled desperately, his usual arrogance replaced by frantic texts, calls that I ignored. "Let's talk," he pleaded in one message. But there was no room for talk. Not anymore. Elise tried to spin the narrative online, posting defensive statements dripping with false concern. But each attempt only fanned the flames of backlash. Derek stood by me through it all, managing the flood of public interest, helping me stay grounded as my reputation blossomed from whispered doubts to loud admiration. Patrick's carefully constructed lies were unraveling. His social circles recoiled as his duplicity became public knowledge. The man who once held control was now grasping at shreds of a reputation he'd burned. Patrick's next moves were predictable, but desperate. He hired a private investigator to dig into my past, hoping to find dirt to discredit me. Grace joined the chorus of pressure, sending cold messages that tried to break me socially. Elise's veiled threats appeared like poison on social media, warning me to stay in my lane, but I was ready. My lawyer was looped in. Every attempt met with calm, calculated resistance. I refused to be rattled by their petty games. Each threat that should have broken me only tightened my grip on the truth. The public had seen the real story now, and the more Patrick and Elise tried to manipulate, the more isolated they became. Their world shrank as mine expanded, buoyed by the fierce support of those who recognized my fight was not just for me, but for Lucas's future. I was no longer invisible. I was unstoppable. Standing on the porch of my new home, the snow crisp and fresh beneath our feet, I breathed deeply, savoring the quiet strength around me. Lucas smiled beside me, a genuine warmth that had been missing for too long. The house was ours, no longer a symbol of struggle but a sanctuary of hope. My nursing career was thriving, and Derek had become more than a friend. He was my partner in every sense. Boundaries with Patrick were firmly in place. No more lies, no more control. The past's shadows had receded, replaced by the steady light of truth reclaimed. As I looked at Lucas, I whispered, "We are more than what they said we'd be." The road ahead was uncertain, but it was ours to walk, strong, proud, and free. This was no longer just survival. This was victory.